I'm Mike Quackenbush. This is Till We Make It, and today I want to break down for you two different kinds of heat. Most pro wrestling matches that you observe can be broken down into 3 acts, and this mirrors the 3-act structure that was first outlined thousands of years ago by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. He breaks it down in one of humankind's earliest written works, Poetics. And although the terminologies that Aristotle outlined in Poetics differ a bit from what we call them in professional wrestling, that 3-act structure has remained largely unchanged for about 2,000 years. The 3-act structure that we use in professional wrestling pervades all types of storytelling. You see it in television shows and in movies. It's used to structure video game play. It's in comic books and graphic novels. And of course, it informs the way that we structure our performances most of the time in pro wrestling. And while the first of those 3 acts is about establishing everything the audience will need to know in order to enjoy the balance of the performance, it's when we get to the second act, rising tension, or, as we often call it in wrestling, the heat, that the job begins to change. There is more than one approach to the way that you might structure your second act, and saying that out loud makes me realize that is yet another video we're going to have to make. But what we're going to concern ourselves with today is not about the structure, but about the tempo. So let's explore 2 different ways in which we can use tempo to make our heats feel different. And I'm going to name these for you. You may have your own names for them or have heard other terms used to define these same ideas. And that's fine. Even if we use different vocabulary, at their core we're probably still talking about the same concepts. The first of these is what I like to call an active heat. So during the second act, we need that rising tension. It has to become more dramatic. And typically we achieve that by imperiling the hero of the story, the protagonist, the babyface. They are in more and more peril. They're in more and more trouble. And this causes that heightening of tension. That's where the second act gets its sizzle from. In an active heat, the protagonist, the hero character, is getting up off the mat and moving often. The babyface does not linger down on the mat and often will sell up. That way, they are ready for whatever the heel presents next. It has movement, it can include spots from the ropes, spots toward the corners, and overall it feels fairly active, so that it is really only 1 gear shift down out of what we were presenting in the first act. But there is a second kind of heat, and I refer to this one as a stalking heat. And this involves downshifting more than 1 gear from what we were presenting in the first act. A stalking heat feels slower and more methodical. And the stalking heat is so named because of the type of activity that it contains. I would say it differs from an active heat like this. When the heel puts the babyface down to the canvas, the heel must return or stalk their prey, pick them back up, and then continue punishing them. The babyface character does not get up of their own accord and return to the heel for more action. The babyface character waits, the character sells, and then the heel stalks back to them, picks them up, and continues the heat. The way this is presented and the way that we want it to make our audience feel, they are very different, active heat and stalking heat. And I'll give you 2 analogies that might help clarify it in your imagination. So think for a second what it's like if you've ever seen a nature documentary where a leopard is chasing a gazelle across the plains. That is an active heat. They are in active pursuit of each other. They are moving. There is a lot of action. It isn't resting. It doesn't feel that it's taking place at a slower tempo. The prey and the predator are locked in a dangerous chase. And here's a separate analogy that also seems like an animal documentary to help draw into view what a stalking heat is like. Picture this in your mind if you can. That there is a clearing in the center of the jungle and a deer or antelope walks out into this opening. It's timid. It's looking around. It knows that it's being stalked, but it's not certain where the danger is coming from. But you can feel that emotion coming out of the animal. Then a lion walks into the clearing. And the lion strides out very confidently. It rules the space. It knows at any time it could overtake its prey, but it's not in any rush, and that pace feels slower. If these tempo changes are new ideas for you to play with the next time that you perform, I want to offer you a simple tip that might help you to deploy both of these on stage and see which one feels better to you, which is not to say that you can't have both in play or other types of heat at all times. When the time comes for you to structure Act 2 of the performance, try this. Place the faster, the active heat, in front of a hope spot. And at the conclusion of the hope spot, use that transition as an opportunity to downshift into even a lower gear and begin the slower, more methodical stalking heat. See if that diminished activity from the protagonist character doesn't help you to heighten the tension because it feels as if the hero is even further imperiled. I know different schools and different organizations preach differently about the way in which a heat needs to be structured, and I am curious to hear from you. Are active heat and stalking heat already concepts that you use when you're performing? And if not, I would like to hear about the ones that you do use. Do you use similar vocabulary? Do you break them down and look at their core concepts similarly? I'd like to know. Drop me a note in the comments below. If an even deeper dive into performative and structural elements of pro wrestling will take your game to the next level, then I know you will enjoy my book, 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer. A book for fellow pro wrestlers is available on Amazon.com or narrated by yours truly and available as an audiobook from Audible. Links to both are in the description below. I could certainly use your help sharing this information with others in our field who are looking to constantly improve, just like you and I. Would you share till we make it with them? I would certainly appreciate it. And make sure that you subscribe and that you like and that you ring the notification bell and you do all of these other really critical things to make sure that YouTube likes my channel.